I built this fully automated AI Onboarding Assistant App using just Lovable, N8N, and Supabase. All a new team member has to do is to ask it a question, and the app will instantly start searching through a database filled with the company's Slack messages, Google Docs, Notion pages, and Google Sheets that constantly update every hour through this N8N workflow. It then finds the most relevant information, generates an answer based on that, and it returns it inside our Lovable interface. And all of that in less than 10 seconds. The best part, you can sell this app to businesses for thousands of dollars each because it saves them massive amounts of time manually onboarding new team members and frees up their time to focus on the actual important tasks that grow their business. So in this video, I will show you exactly how you can build this app step by step while explaining my full thought process behind everything that I do. So by the end, you can recreate this one or a similar app by yourself. So let's get started. So over here in N8N, I just created a brand new workflow, and the first thing we have to do is to obviously come over here and add in our trigger. We will add a scheduled trigger node. And why we're doing that? Well, we're doing that because we want this trigger over here to constantly run every hour or so it actually adds in the new data that we will have over here in our workflow inside Supabase. So to actually configure this, we'll come over here, and as you can see, we have all of these options. Now what do these options mean? Well, over here we basically tell it how often we want it to run the rest of the workflow. So I will come over here and select hours, for example, and I will come over here and leave it on 1 since I want it to run every hour. And then over here the trigger minute, we can also select the minute of the hour that's actually going to run. I will leave it on 0 since it's not that important, and now I will come and click off here. So now we have our trigger node. What should we add next? Well, we actually need to get the data from inside the apps. So how are we gonna do that? Well, let's first actually do it for Slack. So all you have to do is to come over here and click on the plus icon and search for Slack and simply select this one. And then over here, we need to select what we actually want to do. And what we actually want to do is to get the history of a specific channel. So to do that, I will simply come over here and search for history, and you will see this action that is called get the history of a channel. So you simply need to select this one, and now over here you need to select your credentials. But if you don't have your Slack credentials, which many people don't have, you actually will need to create them. So let me show you how you're actually gonna do that. Simply come over here and click on create new credential, and over here you have two options, Auth2 and access token. Guys, every time you have the option to connect with Auth2, I would always recommend you to do so, since it's by far the easiest and safest way to connect. But since I want to take you through the whole process, let me create a brand new account to show you how it is actually done. So you simply come over here and select how you want to sign up. I will sign up with Google, and then over here I will create a brand new workspace. I will give it a name. For example, I will name it Workspace 1. I will click on next, and over here I will input my name. I will say Damien. I will click next. Then over here I will simply skip this step, and finally I will select the free limited version, just to show you that you can actually do this in the free version as well. Alright, great. So now let's say we actually created a brand new channel over here, and we call it, for example, company information, and I'll click on create. And let's say, for example, over here we had some of our company's information that we'll actually need to retrieve inside N8N. Let's say we said over here our product costs $200. Let's also say over here, if you're a new trainee, you get a $100 bonus for the first month. And let's say we want to retrieve this information inside N8N. How are we actually going to do that? Well, we actually have to come over here to where you see the Slack board and simply come over here and click on add apps. And now what we actually have to do is come over here to where you see this big box and simply click on browse apps. So this opens up this new tab, which is the Slack's app section. Now all you have to do is to come over here on top and click on build, and then over here we actually need to create a new app. So I will come over here and click on create an app. We're going to select from scratch, and then over here we need to give it a name. I will name it, for example, N8N connection. You can obviously give it whatever name you want, and then over here you need to select a workspace in your app. I will simply come over here and select workspace 1, which is the workspace that we created before. So I will simply select it and come over here and click on create app. And now this will open up this interface over here with all of these options. And I know, guys, this might seem intimidating, but it's actually super simple to navigate through. Come over here in the features tab to where you see auth and permissions, and simply click on it. And now what you have to do is to scroll down here to where you see bot token scopes. And what you have to do is come over here and simply add in an auth scope. So over here you see all of these options and you're like, what are these? Well, basically guys, what we're actually configuring over here is basically what N8N will have permission to do inside Slack. If you actually come over here and read it, if I select this one for example, you can view messages that directly mention N8N connection. So basically what you have to do is to simply come over here and select the ones that you want to give N8N permission to access in your Slack. So I will come over here and select the first one over here, app mentions, then I will come add another one and I will search over here for read, since that's what we basically want to do. We want to give it access to read messages in our chat history, and I will basically select all of the read ones, guys. You can obviously add in just the ones that you want. So I basically added most of the read ones, and now what I will do is come over here, click on add another scope as well, and this time I will also give it access to the history, so the message history, also to the channels history, to the groups history, and finally to the group direct messages history. Since if you don't actually give permission to N8N for what you want to do, it will simply not be able to access all these functions in Slack. So now after we add in all those permissions, the last thing we have to do, guys, to simply come all the way up here. You see where it says auth tokens, we have the option to install this to workspace 1. So that's what we need to do. So I'll simply click on it and I simply need to come over here and click on allow, and boom, as you can see it was successfully installed inside the workspace. But now the last thing we have to do is to come back over in our Slack, select the channel that we actually want to give N8N access to, and simply come over here and call the brand new chatbot that we just created, which is called N8N connection if you remember, inside this chat. So to do that I will simply come over here and simply call it. So I will select N8N connection app and I will simply click on enter. And as you can see, it asks us over here whether we want this bot to access this channel. So simply come over here and click on add them, and boom, the N8N bot that we just connected has now access in our Slack channel. So now if we come back over to N8N, we simply have to come over here and select connect my account, and as you can see over here on top, you can actually select the workspace we just created, so make sure you select it, and then simply scroll over here and click on allow, and boom, connection was successful. So now we close this off, and let me close this off as well. You can see over here, if I come over here and click on this drop down menu, I can actually see all the channels I have inside Slack. But if I actually come over here and select a channel that I haven't given the bot access to, for example this channel over here, and come and click on the execute step, you can see that we have an error. But if I come over here and select the channel that I gave the bot access to, which is the company information channel, and I come over here and click on execute step, and boom, look at that, guys. Over here we do in fact have the data from inside Slack. And if we come over here to the table so you guys can see better, if I scroll over here we can see we have the text, and it is the exact text that we just typed inside Slack. As you can see over here it says if you're a new trainee you get a $100 bonus, and over here our product costs $200, which means that we have successfully gotten the data from our Slack channel inside N8N. So now what we have to do, guys, is to actually add in this data inside our database. But before we actually do that, guys, we do not want this data to be duplicated, as I explained before. So we have to make sure we don't add in the same data that we have added before. So how are we gonna do that exactly? We're going to do that by simply coming over here and searching for the remove duplicates node, guys. And what this node actually does, it checks the data that gets passed it. And what do I mean by that is, data will come from this Slack node over here, and it will actually see, have I received this data before? If yes, then I will not let it pass through me to the next node. If not, then the data will pass normally. And how we're gonna configure that, guys, is we have to open this up. We have to select remove items processed in previous executions, since that's what we want to do, basically duplicate items already seen in previous executions, we want to remove them. Then over here, keep items where, and we will leave it on value is new. And then over here, we need to input a unique ID, for which ID will actually be able to memorize the data that we input inside here, so it can actually decide whether it will let it pass or not. And what do I mean by that is, if we come over here, for example, and we type in Slack, just so you guys can see, and I click on execute step, you can see it has two possible outcomes. The kept, which is all the 9 items, because these 9 items have not passed again, and they discarded, which, as you can see, it is empty now. But since this node actually remembers the data that goes past it, if I come again and I click on execute step, you can see that now in the kept section we have nothing, and all 9 items are in the discarded section. Why? Because it simply remembers the data that went inside it. Now we do have some options to configure this data, so you can come over here and click on add field, and here you can add in a scope, which what this basically means is where this data is going to be saved. Will this data be saved for the whole workflow or for these nodes specifically that we have over here, which means that if we add in another node, it would basically reset to 0. But since we actually want to have this only on this specific node, I will select node, and we have another option, which is the history size, in which we are basically able to tell it how many items we want to remember, and if it exceeds the number, then it will forget those items. So let's say if, for example, over here we had more than 10,000 items, we had like 11,000, then it wouldn't actually remember the first 1,000 that went past it. So if we try to add them again, it would actually add them. So I suggest you simply make this number so big, it's just unreasonable for it to actually be able to pass it. But if we actually wanted to change its memory in this node specifically, all we have to do is to simply come over here and add in a different ID. For example, if I said hello over here, then it will reset this memory and it will use this ID to identify it. And if I came back over here and said Slack again, then it will remember that these items have already passed and it wouldn't let them pass again. So now that we have configured this and we know that we will not have any duplicates inside our database, it's time we actually add them inside our database. So how are we gonna do that? Well, first we have to come over here and search for Supabase. Now over here we have two options, guys. We have the simple Supabase node and the Supabase vector store node. Since the node that we'll use with the AI agent will be a vector store, we have to select Supabase vector store, guys. And that is very important, and I will explain to you why in a bit. Over here, since we actually want to add documents in our vector store, I will simply select this one, and this opens up this node over here. Now the first thing that we have to do, guys, is to actually go over to Supabase and create the table in which we will insert all of our data in. So to do that, you have to come over to supabase.com. I will leave a link for it in the description below. You need to create an account and configure your credentials first. And if you don't know how to do that, I will not show this in this video, because if I do, this video will turn out to be very long. But I have made a dedicated video for this, in which I go over the process of creating and connecting your Supabase credentials inside N8N in detail. So make sure you go and check that out. I will leave a link for it somewhere around here. And after you watch that video and you have your credentials ready to go, what you have to do is to simply come over here to the left and make sure you select Table Editor. Now this opens up all the tables we have inside our Supabase account. Now, for this example, I will create a brand new table to show you the whole process. To do that, you simply have to come over here and click on New Table, and over here we need to give it a name. For this example, I will name it Example Table. You can obviously name it however you want. For the description, I will give it the exact same name. And then over here in the columns, guys, and this is the most important part of this whole automation, what we actually have to do is to make sure we create some very specific columns in order for the vector store to actually be able to work and retrieve data. Because if we just add some random columns over here, we will have a problem later on when we actually try to give this data to the AI agent so it can actually analyze it and give us a response. So what should these columns be? It's actually pretty simple, guys. So I opened up another tab and went back over in the table editor, because once you create your accounts with Supabase in N8N, you will have this table over here that is called Documents, which has these specific values over here on top. And you need to make sure you actually have those values inside your table as well. So to do that, you can simply just copy them from here, or you can even come over here and simply duplicate this table, simply give it another name, which is going to be example table, click on save, which will basically duplicate this table, so you will not actually have to recreate it by yourself. If you actually want to create a brand new table that also has more values inside it, I will also show you how you can do it from over here. So you basically add in the columns you want, and you can name them exactly as you want again, but you need to make sure you have the metadata column, and you come over here and select JSON B for this one specifically, and then you add in another column that is called embedding. You come over here and make sure this is a vector. So now that you've added these columns, you can add in any other column you want. For example, I will come over here and I will add in a column that's called text. I will make sure this is a text column from over here, so we can actually put in all of the text that we get from the documents inside this one. So now I will come over here and click on save, and as you can see, example table 1 was created over here. I will actually go over the other example and simply delete it so don't get confused, but I want to show you both ways of how you create this table so you can decide which one you want to use. So now that we have our table over over here, we obviously need to start adding data inside it. So to do that, we need to come back over to N8N. Again, you need to select your Supabase credentials over here. If you haven't created them, make sure you check out this video in which I show you exactly how you can do that. And after that, we simply make sure this is on insert documents, since that is exactly what we want to do. And then over here from table name, we simply need to select the table in which we want to insert the information to, which for us is the table called example table 1. And over here, we need to select the embedding batch size, which is basically how many documents we will be able to insert in one line. Obviously, you can put this number as high as you want, but I would advise you not to put it very high, because if you add in a lot of documents in only one line, it will actually have a problem scanning through them and basically being able to get the information from them. So I would suggest you to leave it on 200. I think that's pretty good, honestly. And now what you can also do is come over here, click on add option, and you see we have this query name and these mass documents, which do not overcomplicate it, is basically how Supabase actually is able to insert these documents inside its database. So just make sure you have this like it is over here. And now what we actually have to do, if I close this, is we actually need to add in an embedding and a document loader. So let's go and do that. So I will simply come over here, click on embedding document, and over here we need to select the LLM which we'll use to embed the documents. So I will simply come over here, select OpenAI. And guys, this is very important as well. Over here in the model, you can select any model you want, but just make sure it's the model you want to use in the next embeddings as well, and the model you're going to use when the AI agent actually is trying to retrieve information. Because if you actually change this, so let's say for example I choose this one when I insert the documents, but when I go over and try to retrieve them in the AI agent, I choose this one, N8N will actually give me an error. So make sure you select the model you want to use for all of them. I will select GPT-3 small. It's not really that important, all of them basically do the same job anyway. So now we have successfully added our model. So now we actually have to come over here, click on document, and we need to insert our document loader, which we can choose from default data loader and GitHub document loader. Well, to make your life easier, just simply come over here and select default data loader and just leave all of the options exactly as they are. You basically don't need to configure anything. So now you simply come over here and click off of this, and it's time we actually test to see if we're actually able to insert the documents inside a Supabase vector store. But before I do that, because we have already run the remove duplicates, it will actually not let the data pass. So I will simply come over here and I will actually change this value to /1, for example, just so we can actually get this data passed. And I will simply come over here and click on execute step, and boom guys, our node was executed successfully and we have managed to add in all this data inside Supabase. So if I come back over to Supabase guys, you can see over here I have all of this data from inside our Slack message, which basically has everything that was written over there. And you can see over here inside as well the messages that we specifically send, which are, if you're a new trainee, you get this. You actually need to make sure you also have in this value name content and not text like I had it before, because if you have a text, it will not actually be able to input it inside here, since the original table N8N creates when you first create your credentials is called content over here. So make sure you actually have this called content inside here as well. So if I come back over to N8N, we have successfully managed to create the first part of our automation, which is adding all of our Slack messages inside the Supabase vector store. And now it's time we actually add in all of our Google Docs inside the same Supabase vector store as well. So to do that, again, you simply have to come and select schedule trigger over here. Again, you can configure it however you want. I will configure it to run every hour. And now what we actually have to do is to get all of our Google Docs files in order for us to be able to put them inside the Supabase vector store. But if I come over here guys and I search for Google Docs and I simply select this one, you can see we only have option to create a document, to get the document, and to update the document, and we cannot actually retrieve all of our Google Docs simultaneously, so we can actually add them all in our Supabase vector store. Well, how are we gonna work around that? We actually have to come over here and not search for Google Docs, but search for Google Drive. You might be like, why are we searching for Google Drive? Well, simply guys, because N8N actually allows us to get all of our Google Docs from inside Google Drive. I know this doesn't make much sense, but that's how this node is specifically set up. So, in order for us to be able to do that, we need to come over here to File and Folder Actions and simply select Search Files and Folders. And this opens up this brand new node. Now, the first thing you need to do is obviously select your Google credentials. If you haven't created them, you can check out this video which will show you how you can do that as well. So simply select them, then over here on resource you leave it on file/folder, then over here on operation you leave it on search, since we actually want to search for our documents inside Google Docs. Then over here in the search method we need to change this from search file folder name to advanced search. And what we actually have to do, guys, is over here in the query string we have to come over here and open the AI assistant and basically tell it, hey, give me the query string so I can get all of my Google Docs, and simply click on enter. And now, guys, what the AI system will do is it will basically give you a snippet of code which you will actually be able to input there, so you can actually retrieve all of your Google Docs that are inside your Google account. And as you can see, it gave us this snippet, so all I have to do is come over here and copy it. Let me close this again, simply come over here and paste it in, and now we'll actually be able to retrieve our Google Docs. But over here, we actually can configure how many of our Google Docs we actually want to get back. Since we want to actually get them all back, I will simply come over here and click on return all, and we're basically good to go with this node. Now I know this query string is a little bit confusing method to actually get the docs, but at least right now, at the moment this video is being recorded, is the only way we can actually retrieve all of them at once. So, to actually test this, let's first click off of here and let's make sure it is connected to an actual trigger so we can actually run it. Then let's open it again and simply come over here and click on execute step. And you can see, guys, over here we have 29 items. And over here in the schema we have the Google Docs IDs of all of my personal Google Docs. And if I come over here in the table so you can take a better look at it, you can see we basically have the ID, next to it the name of the Google Doc. So now that we have done that, let's check for duplicates, since we don't actually want to add in duplicates in our Supabase vector store. So again, you simply can come over here and simply copy the previous node, since we have already created it, simply paste it over here and then simply connect it. But now you have to open it again and make sure we actually change the value over here. Not that if we leave it on Slack we will have any problem, because most likely the ID that is inside of Google Docs will probably not be inside of Slack messages, but in the rare case it actually is. It is the most optimal thing to actually change this, and I will actually name it Google Docs over here. You can obviously put in any value you want, but I will actually use this for this example. And if we come over here and click on execute step, we can see that all of these IDs pass, but again, if we actually click on execute step again, you can see that it discarded all of them, since it remembers the actual IDs that have passed. But because I actually want to be able to use this data, let me change this one more time, so I can actually click on execute step again and have this over here in the kept, so I can actually pass it in the next node, which is not going to be a Supabase vector store, because if you remember, guys, the only thing we have over here is the actual IDs of the Google Docs and not the actual information that is inside them. We need to first get the information that is inside them, and then we can add them in our Supabase vector store. So to do that, we have to simply come over here and search for Google Docs this time. So I will simply select this one and I will select get a document, since that is exactly what we want to do. Then over here again you select your Google credentials. On resource we'll leave it on document, operation we'll leave it on get, and over here we have this field that is called doc ID. So all you have to do is come over here from the schema and simply drag and drop the Google Docs ID, so it actually knows which Google Doc to actually retrieve. And now all you have to do is to simply test it. So I'll come over here and click on execute step, and boom, guys, as you can see we do have 29 outputs over here, and we have all of the content of our Google Docs. Obviously inside here I have my personal Google Docs as well, but as you can see we have some examples I used for a previous video in this YouTube channel, which is actually pretty nice. So now all we have to do is to simply add it in the Supabase vector store. But since we have already configured this, let's not recreate it again. I will simply come over here, copy these three nodes over here, and simply come over here and press Ctrl V to paste them. And now all I will do is simply connect them to the Google Docs over here. Now if we actually open this up, we can see that we basically have everything configured already. So all we have to do now, guys, simply come over here and click on execute step, and this will actually add in all the information from my Google Docs inside our Supabase vector store. And as you can see, it output successfully, and we have added all of this information inside our Supabase. So if I come back over in my Supabase and I refresh the page obviously, and I come over here to where I can see the Google Docs that were inserted. If for example I open this app, you can see that over here we have the customer name George, customer email, and all this information that was inside this Google Doc over here, which I actually created for a previous video, which means that we have successfully managed to add in all of our Google Docs over here inside our Supabase vector store. So now we're done with this part of the automation as well. The next part is to actually add in our Notion pages inside the same vector store as well. So to do that, we first obviously need to come over here and copy the trigger and simply paste it in. So we actually have a trigger for a new workflow over here. And then what we actually need to do is to get all the information we have outside our Notion pages and bring it over inside N8N. So to do that, we have to come over here and click on the plus icon, simply search for Notion and select it. And what we actually have to do, guys, is come over here in the database section and simply select get many databases. And this opens up all of these options, but the first thing we have to do is to actually connect our Notion credentials. Obviously you have already connected them, select them, but if you haven't, you simply have to come over here and click on create new credential. And as you can see, we need this internal integration secret key. Well, how we gonna get that? Well, it's actually pretty simple. So you have to come over to Notion, guys, and you have to come over here, over to the settings, simply click on them, and then over here you need to come all the way down to where you see connections, select that option, and then you need to come over here to where it says develop or manage integrations and simply select this, which will actually open a brand new tab. And over here you see you're in the integrations tab. I already have an Notion integration, but let me actually create a brand new one so you can see how it's done. So I'll simply come over here, click on new integration. Then over here I need to select my workspace. I will select my personal workspace over here. Over here in the type you need to select between internal and public. Since you actually want to use this yourself, you simply select internal, and then you come over here and click on save. Make sure you also come over here and give it a name. I almost forgot, and I will name it Damian's workspace. And then you simply come over here and click on save, and as you can see, the integration successfully created, and you click on configure integration settings, and over here you see we have the internal integration secret key, which is the exact key that we needed to input inside N8N to actually connect Notion. To see your key, simply come over here and click on copy, and make sure you don't show anyone this key. Treat it as a password. I will obviously delete this one after uploading this video, and simply come over here and click on copy, and come back over to N8N and simply paste this inside here, and come over here and click on save. And as you can see, credential was successfully created. So now if we come and click off of this, we can actually select our Notion credentials. So make sure you do that. But before we're actually able to retrieve any data from here, we have to give Notion access to the specific pages we want it to be able to get information from. We have to come back over to Notion, and let's say I want to give it access to this specific project. All I have to do is come over here on the top and click on these three dots, come over here to where it says connections, simply hover over it and click on add a connection, and then you need to search for the name you gave to the connection you created before. I named it Damian's workspace, so I will select it. Obviously you search for the name you gave to your connection, simply select it, you come over here and you click on confirm. And now N8N has access to this specific project. So obviously if you want to give N8N access to multiple projects, you have to do that for each project you want to give it access to. But let's say for example I actually want to change these tasks, and let's say I don't actually want to publish my first book. I want to create the marketing campaign till the 8th of June, for example, and I change this so we can actually ask it as a question to the AI agent later on. So now if I come back over to N8N, we still have to configure this node. So over here in the resource, we will still select database. Over here in the operation, we will select get many, since that is exactly what we want to do. And over here we again can specify a limit, but since I want to actually get all of the data from inside Notion, I will simply come over here and select return all. Now if I come over here and click on execute step, and boom guys, as you can see over here, I got in this information for this database, which I will actually use in the next node to actually retrieve all the information from it. And now you might say, well, why didn't you just retrieve the information from this database? Since you can actually do it if you came over here, for example, and you selected get, and you simply selected your database. Well, I did that because if we actually have many databases over here, I actually want to be able to get the information from all of them. We first need to get their ID and then retrieve information from each specific one. That's why I did that. So now let's actually do that. We have to come over here. But before we actually get the information from this database, let's actually remove the duplicates as well. So to do that, again, we come over here, copy this node, since we already have configured it, come over here and paste it. And now we simply connect it, and if we come over here and we click on execute step, so we can actually pass the data, we can see that we have the same exact data over here. And now what we actually need to do is to come over here and search for Notion again, but this time, guys, what we actually have to do is to come over here in the database page actions and simply select on get a database page, since that's exactly what we want to do. And as you can see, we have all of the settings configured already, so we'll leave them exactly as they are. Now over here we can select to either retrieve the data from URL or by ID. We can do both. For this example, I'll simply choose the URL, so I'll simply come over here in the schema, take the URL and simply drag and drop it over here, and now I'll simply come over here and click on execute step. And guys, we have an error over here because I made a silly mistake, and I'm leaving these parts inside the video so I can show you how you can troubleshoot things like this. Every time you get an error, all you have to do is to simply come over here and read what N8N is telling you, because it literally tells you exactly how you can fix it. So if we come over here and read, it tells us this is an actual database, another page, and we're actually trying to get a database page. What we should be trying to get, simply database. So to do that, we have to come over here and change this from get to get many pages in a database. And now if I again come over here and select again by URL, for example, and I simply take the URL and drag and drop this over here, I will again select on return all, since I want to return all the information, and I come over here, click on execute step. You can see that I have all the information from inside my Notion page. And as you can see, if I come over here to the table and simply search for the text I wrote before, you can see create the marketing campaign till the 8th of June, which means that we have successfully gotten all the data from inside our Notion project inside N8N. And now the only thing that's left is to actually add it in our Supabase vector store over here. Again, we don't actually need to configure this, simply can come over here, click on Ctrl C or Command C if you're on Mac, simply come over here, click on Ctrl V to simply paste this in, simply come over here and connect it. And now the only thing we have to do is to come over here and click on execute step, since we have already configured all of this. So again, we have successfully added all this data inside our Supabase vector store. And if I come back over to the Supabase vector store, I can see over here I have the exact message I just sent to Notion, which is create a marketing campaign till the 8th of June. So we have successfully added in all the Notion data as well. So now the only data that is left to be added in is the data from inside our company's Google Sheets, which is actually the trickiest part of the automation, and you will see why in a bit. So obviously our first step should be again adding in a trigger node. I will again copy this, simply paste it over here since we have already created it. And now guys, we first have to get the data from inside the Google Sheets. So to do that, we have to come over here. But if we search for Google Sheets over here, guys, you can see that there is no option in which we can get all of our Google Sheets in mass. There is only the get rows option over here, from which we can only get the data from one of our Google Sheets, and we can get the data from all of them. So this node is actually useless to us right now, so simply come over here and delete it. So how we're actually going to be able to get all the information from inside the Google Sheets? The same exact way we got in all the data from our Google Documents, which is going to be by using the Google Drive node. So we simply need to select on Google Drive, and again we need to come over here to file and folder actions, simply select search files and folders. Now again we need to connect our Google credentials. So once you have done that, you leave the reasons on file and folder, operation on search method, you come over here and you change it from search file / folder to advanced search. And again guys, we need a query string over here, but we don't need the same query string with the Google Docs. We obviously need a different one which is specific for Google Sheets. So to do that, again we come over here to the AI assistant and we'll literally tell it the exact same thing. Hey, give me the query string so I can get all of my, and this time we say Google Sheets rather than Google Docs, and we simply click on enter. And now the AI assistant will give us again a similar string, but this time it will be so we can retrieve all of our Google Sheets specific IDs. So as you can see, it gives us this string. All we have to do is to come over here and copy it. Let's close this off as well. And now we simply need to come over here and paste it in. Again over here we have the option to return all, I will simply select it. And now let's actually test to see if this works. So I'll come over here, click on execute step, and you can see that we have successfully retrieved all of the Google Sheets inside a Google account. But we have not retrieved the actual information from inside them. We have only retrieved the specific IDs, as you can see over here. So now we actually need to retrieve information that each sheet has inside it, so we can insert it inside our Supabase vector store. But before we do that, what we again first have to do is to make sure we actually remove all the duplicates, because we do not want any duplicates, guys, inside our vector store. So again, copy the remove duplicates node. I simply connect it with a Google Drive over here, and let me come over here and simply execute it. Oh guys, and as you can see, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have executed it like that, because we simply need to give it a different value. Not that it is wrong having the same value, because again, the chances of it having the same data is very low. But again, just to be safe, let's actually give it a different name. I will name it Google Sheets over here, so we can actually save in its memory for Google Sheets and not for Google Docs or Notion or anything else. And I think I haven't changed it in Notion as well, so let me actually go over here. Yes, I have not changed it, and actually change it over here as well, so we're 100% safe. Things like these, guys, is how some workflows run into errors, so you're like, but I don't understand, everything should be working perfectly. But it's the minor little things like these which actually give you trouble, so make sure you always make the smaller changes to avoid errors in the future. So now all we have to do is to simply come over here, search for Google Sheets, and then we'll come over here, select get rows in Sheets, since that's what we actually want to do. So we will leave all of the options exactly as they are, and we will simply need to come over here and change this from list to over here by ID, since that is the information we have for each Google Sheet. We have its specific ID. So we need to come over here, take the schema of it, simply drag and drop this over here, and then in the sheet over here, you obviously need to select the sheet number. If you have documents that have multiple sheets, the only work around this, guys, is you will have to first of all select sheet 1, then come over here, put this on top, for example, then come over here, copy this, paste in, so you have two Google Sheet documents. Simply connect them as well, and then simply come over here and select sheet 2, sheet 3, and do that for how many sheets you have in your document, so you can actually retrieve all the information from inside them. But since I only have one sheet, I'll simply leave it on 1, and now we're done configuring all of these things. So if I come over here and click on execute step, you will see we'll actually run into a problem, which is none other than a problem that a lot of people wouldn't immediately understand. Because you see this, oh, it's successfully executed, we're good to go. But if we come over here to the table, we can see that we have all of this data, but if we actually take a closer look at it, guys, if I change the page, for example, we can see that this is basically the same exact data that is displayed over and over again for 20 pages. And why is that, guys? Because this node did execute 24 times, but it actually executed and retrieved the same data from the exact same node 24 times. And why is that, guys? Because the Google Sheet is the only Google node inside N8N that cannot by itself execute multiple times and each time retrieve data from a different Google Sheet. Because if you actually take a closer look again, we can see that all of this is basically has the same things, which is exactly the things that are inside in this Google Sheet. Well, if I come over here in all of my Google Sheets, you can see that I have all of these Google Sheets over here, which they were actually not displayed inside there. So how are we actually going to work around that, guys? Well, it's actually pretty simple. To work around this, guys, what we have to do is to simply come over here, delete this connection from over here, and we have to come over here in the plus icon and search for loop over items, which what this node actually does, guys, is basically allows us, as you can see over here, it might look a little bit weird at first, but it's actually very simple to use. Let me just make sure it actually set up correctly. Let me delete this one. So what this node actually does, it continuously loops until we have finished gathering all the data, which is going to be all the data from Google Sheets. So how we're actually going to be able to configure this node, guys, is as you can see over here, it has two possible values. The done, which basically is activated when it has finished looping, has gathered all the data, and then we can simply continue with the rest of our workflow with this function over here. And then we have the loop function, which continuously loops until we gather all the data we want. So what we have to do is to simply connect the loop over items over here in the remove duplicates, and then come over here to the loop outcome, simply take this and connect it to the Google Sheets. And now what we actually have to do is to come over here, take the Google Sheets, simply connect it back over here to loop items, which what this will do, guys, is it will continuously keep looping until we get all the different Google Sheets from inside here, But because we have already run that duplicate items, let me actually remove this from now and we will insert it in the workflow in a bit. I will explain to you why. So if I actually come back over here and open this up so you can understand better, click on execute previous nodes, you can see that over here we basically have all of these 24 IDs. And what the loop will actually do is it will loop and allow the Google Sheet node to actually get in all the data for all 24 of these sheets. So just so you see it in practice, let me actually come over here and simply execute this workflow fully. So you see, it keeps on looping and it actually stopped, which is pretty funny. But the fact that it stopped is an amazing pass that was given to me right now to actually show you how you can run into errors, guys. The reason it actually stopped looping is because if I open this up, you can see we have no output data in the second one. And why is that? That is because if I go over in my Google Sheets and you see this one that is called AI and I simply open this up, you can see it is completely empty. So it basically had no data to actually retrieve inside N8N. And as you can see over here, it is the exact Google Sheet. It actually stopped running. So this is a way everything might seem to be working perfectly fine, but a workflow starts breaking for no reason. And we're like, why did that happen? Well, because some Google Sheets just might not have any data and they were just created. So how are we gonna work around that? Every time we meet a Google Sheet that has no data, our workflow doesn't break, our loop doesn't stop looping, and it actually continues looping for all 24 items. Well, it's actually pretty simple. We simply have to come over here in the Google Sheets node and we have to come over here to the settings tab, which is a tab that most people have never opened in N8N, if I'm gonna be honest, but it's actually super useful to be able to troubleshoot things like that. All you have to do is to come over here and click on always output data and turn this on, because if it always outputs data, even if it doesn't have anything to output, that will mean it will not actually stop till we have looped all 24 items. So now, just so you see how this works, if I come over here and click on execute workflow, you can see it loops once, it loops twice, and it continues 3 times, 4 times. That is because we enable this setting so it outputs something so the workflow doesn't stop looping. So now just let it loop all 24 times and I will be back with you once it's done. And now it is done, guys. So if I actually open this up, we can see over here, guys, that it actually did 25 runs, and for each run we can actually change this and have different data displayed inside here. Obviously some of the Google Sheets are completely empty. We can actually see different data inside here, which means that we actually successfully managed to bring all the data from each different Google Sheet inside N8N. So now we can actually take this data and add it inside a Supabase vector store. To do that, it will actually be a little bit more complex than that, but I will explain to you exactly how we're going to do that. But now, to actually add in the data inside a Supabase vector store, what we have to do is to simply break this loop and come over here and simply zoom out. Let's take our vector store from over here, copy these 3 nodes, paste them over here since we have already configured them before. Let's actually connect it and then take the Supabase vector over here and then put that back over in the loop. So now for each time we actually get data from one Google Sheet, we actually automatically add this inside a Supabase vector store, and we don't actually have to do it from over here when this loop is actually finished. And why are we not doing that from over here, guys? Well, you will see in a bit, but because the best way you can actually understand this is if you actually see this actually happening. If I come over here and click on execute workflow, for example, you can see everything seems to be working perfectly normally and things are being added inside our Supabase vector store. Again, this stopped because I again need to come over here and select always output data as well. So that wasn't what I wanted to show you, but again, that's exactly a perfect way a workflow could break and you're not having any idea about it. So that's why I leave this inside the video as well. So let me execute it again so I can show you what I actually wanted to show you initially. So let's say this adds in all the data, everything seems perfectly normal, it keeps on looping, but let's say let me actually stop it from looping, so execution stopped. And now if I come back over to Supabase, we can see the data that was added from Google Sheets. This is the data, but we have a problem here. And what is the problem exactly? Well, as you can see over here, we have HDMI cable, then we have another row underneath it, which is electronics, Amazon, conference room setup, which is all data that was inside the Google Sheet. But the problem here, guys, is that there is no common denominator, which what do I mean by that is there is no way for anyone looking at this database to understand all of these values that are in the same Google Sheet and more importantly are actually meant to be in the same row and have similar meaning. And just so you see it better with an example, let's say we actually have electronics over here. Inside the Google Sheet, underneath it, for example, we might have, electronics, we bought them at this specific date. But inside this database, we cannot actually tell that we actually bought electronics in this specific date, which if we actually looked in the Google Sheet, we would be able to tell. And just so you visually see this as well, again over here in the Google Sheet, we can see, we have a category here and we have electronics, and we bought it at this specific date, and we bought a MacBook Pro over here, and the price was $2,100. But if we come back over to Supabase, in the way the data is actually input over here, there is nothing connecting all these values. We just see some random values. We just see a date over here, a MacBook over here, electronics over here. There's nothing that would insist that these are actually for the same purchase. So we cannot actually connect them and treat them as one information. So if we actually came over in my AI agent, for example, and asked him, hey, at what date did I buy electronics? He wouldn't actually be able to tell me, you bought electronics at this date. Because by looking at this database, he cannot actually understand that we actually bought it in this specific date. So how are we actually going to be able to work around that, guys? Well, a very good way to do that would be to actually combine all of these values, for example, all of the values of one Google Sheet, and simply insert them inside one row. So let's imagine that in one row like this, we basically had the date, then we had electronics, for example, then we had, it was an HDMI cable, it cost like $2,100. Obviously an HDMI cable did not cost as much, but you get the point. If we had the data in this form, the AI agent would actually be able to tell that these values are actually connected. And if we asked it a question about, when did we buy electronics, it would actually be able to tell us the date. So I think you get the point. We need to go back over to N8N and actually fix that. So how are we gonna be able to actually do that? Well, it's pretty simple. We're gonna have to come over here in the plus icon and search for aggregate, which what this node actually does, guys, is it basically takes in a lot of data, which in our case will actually be from inside the Google Sheets over here. So basically we'll be able to take all the data from inside each specific Google Sheet and simply put it all in one specific schema, in one specific field. So we can actually input it all inside our Supabase database. So the AI agent that we're going to use later can actually connect the dots and be able to say, you bought this HDMI cable at this specific date for this specific amount. So that's exactly why we're going to use this node specifically. And to actually configure this, since we actually don't know which schemas are actually going to be returned every time, because each Google Sheet actually have different schemas. For example, this one has the row number, the date, the item. If we scrape another Google Sheet, we have different values. We have phone, we have balance, we have last payment. So how we're actually going to be able to work around that is we're gonna come over here and change it from individual fields to all item input data into a single list. And that will basically take all the data, regardless of the name, and simply input it in one single value. And then over here we simply need to give a name to this new data. For example, we could say something like, this is the output. You can obviously give it whatever name you actually want. And then over here include, make sure you select all fields. Since we don't actually want to specify certain fields, we actually want to include all the fields from the Google Sheet to actually combine them into one simple value. And again, I will come over here in the settings, I will not fall for this trick again, and I'll make sure to always output data. And now it's time we actually test to see if this works. So let me just come over here, click on execute step, and you can see over here, guys, that it did execute successfully. And if I come over here, we can see that everything inside this value called output is basically all of the content of the Google Sheet, but it is inside this specific array over here that is called output, which means that we can actually put all of this data inside a Supabase vector store. But before we actually are able to connect this to Supabase and input all this data inside there, what we have to do, guys, is first add in another node in between these two, which is going to be the edit fields node. And the reason we're actually adding this node, guys, is because as you can see, this is an array over here, and we can understand it from these three lines it has over here. The parameter that we're using inside our Supabase vector store is actually, we named it content, and we actually made it to only be able to receive text and not an array, which means if we actually try to add this in, it will basically add it exactly as it was added before. So to work around that, we simply have to come over here, click on it, and now, guys, what we have to do is to simply come over here and give a name into our brand new value that is going to be a string. So I will simply name it content, for example, and then all we have to do is to make sure, first of all, that it is string. This is super important. And then we need to come over here in the aggregate, take the output, which is an array, and simply drag and drop this over here so it can actually reference this. And now we simply come over here, click on execute step, which is going to turn this output into a nice string. Now you can also do as a plus. It's not really required, but it will actually help. The AI agent is not connected to the Supabase vector, but to come over here, simply add in an AI model, for example, and select message model. Let me first select a model. I select GPT-4. We will basically come over here and tell it, hey, make this in human language. Don't change the content at all, just turn it into human-like text. And simply take this value and drag and drop this over here, so the AI can actually have access to all of this text that we just created. And then come over here, click on execute step. And what this will do, guys, is it will basically take this kind of weird text, as you can see, his brackets is weirdly formatted, and basically turn it into easy to read human-like language. So when our AI agent actually takes a look at it, it can more easily retrieve information from it. It's not really required, but I have found, because I've tested this, that the AI agent is way more likely to retrieve correct information when it is in actual human format rather than this kind of weird format over here. So that's why we did this step, and now all we have to do is simply come over here and simply connect this to the Supabase vector store. And now let's actually add in all the data we have from Google Sheets over there inside our Supabase vector store. So to do that, we simply come over here, click on execute step, and as you can see, all of this is going to start to run, and it will add in all the data inside the Supabase vector store. So I will be back once it is done. And it just finished, guys. So if I come over here inside the Supabase and I open this up, for example, you can see that we have the row number, then we have underneath the name of the person, the phone, the balance, last payment, etc. And you can see we have the information for all the people inside the Google Sheet in this format, which means that the AI agent will actually be able to understand that, oh, this is Zoe, for example, and her phone is this, her balance is this, and will actually be able to basically connect the dots and actually use the information we gave it from inside the Google Sheets. So that means that we have successfully inserted all of the data from inside the Google Sheets inside Supabase as well, in a format that the AI agent can actually understand. And now that I spoke about the AI agent, it's time we actually build it. So I will come back over to N8N. Let me just make sure I come over here again in the settings, and I make sure this is on always output data as well, since we don't want our workflow to break like it did with these two nodes. I will not fall for the same trick the third time. And then over here, let me also connect the remove duplicates as well, since we removed it, so we can actually test the workflow. So now we have fully finished with all of this workflow. Let's go to step number 2 and actually build our AI agent. And since we're actually going to use a front-end interface that we're going to build with an app like Lovable, we're gonna have to use a webhook node. What this node actually does, guys, is it basically allows us to connect our front-end interface that we're going to build with Lovable in just a bit with our backend automation in N8N. So to actually be able to do that, all we have to do is to come over here in the HTTP method and change it from get to post, since we're going to be sending a post request over to Lovable and not a get request. And now all we have to do is come over here, click on this link in order for us to actually copy it in a clipboard. And now I will come over to Lovable, and it's time we actually build a front-end interface. So to do that, I will simply come over here and type, hey, create me a front-end interface for an AI team onboarding app. I wanted to basically have a simple chat interface in which the person will be able to ask questions about the company they're working on, and he will get a response. I will make sure he gets the response from an automation I create in N8N, so don't do anything in the backend, just build a nice looking front-end interface. That is your job. And now, guys, what I will actually do, I will go over to Google, search for a nice looking UI, scroll through here till I find one that I like. Let's say I actually really like this one. So what I will do is simply come over here, download it, and simply come back over to Lovable, upload it over here, so Lovable actually has a visual reference of how I want the app to look like. And that is a very good vibe coding hack that really helps you get better looking UIs. And I will also come over here and say, this is the webhook URL from N8N, make sure you embed it inside the website, so every time I send in any message, the data gets sent back over there. And I will simply come over here and paste the webhook link I just copied before, and simply click on enter. And now Lovable will start building our front-end interface for us. So I will be back with you once it is done. And boom guys, it just finished generating, and as you can see it gave me this interface, which if I'm gonna be honest looks pretty good. So let's actually test it. I will come over here and I will ask a question like, how much does a service cost? And before I come over here and click on send, what I have to do is come over here in my N8N workflow and make sure I click on listen for test event. So our webhook actually expects to receive data from Lovable, and then come over here back to Lovable and simply click on enter. And as you can see, if I come back over to N8N, we do have an output, and if I scroll all the way down here guys, you see the message which says how much does a service cost, which is the exact message I sent in my Lovable interface, which means that we have successfully connected Lovable with our webhook over here. So now I will close this off. Just for the ease of use of it, I'll simply come over here and add in another trigger node. I'll make it a chat trigger node so we can more easily test our AI agent that we're going to build on now. But then we'll simply delete this one and simply connect the webhook and we will be good to go. Now what we have to do is to simply come over here and add in our AI agent. So now over here in our AI agent, we will come over here and change this from connect to chat trigger node, since we're not actually going to be connected to a chat trigger node, and select define below. And over here we need to give it a prompt with instructions of how we want it to act each time we give it a message. So to do that, I will simply come over here and say, every time I give you a question, make sure you go and check in the Supabase vector store for data so you can give me an answer solely based on that data. Output professional human-like text while still keeping the conversational tone. Also don't say this is your response, just give me a response up front, because I have actually found when I was testing it that it actually used to tell me, oh, so this is your response, and then giving me the actual response. So basically told it to don't do that and to just give me the response. And now what I will do, I will come over here and say this is the question, and simply come over here, take the question from the chat trigger node, drag and drop this over here, so our AI agent actually has access to the question we want to ask it. And now we'll simply come over here and close this off. The next thing that we have to do is to actually give it a chat model so it can actually work. So I will come over here and again I will select OpenAI and I will leave this on GPT-4o mini. This is fine. Over here in the memory, I will come over here and add in Postgres chat memory, since this is the memory the Supabase vector store actually uses. And over here I will actually come and change the connect to chat trigger node, since we're actually going to change the chat trigger node to a webhook later on. Simply select define below, and over here we need to input a key so it actually remembers this specific conversation. So I will simply come over here and say onboarding. You can obviously put in any value you want over here, it just so it remembers this specific conversation. And I will increase the context window to 10, which what that basically means is that we remember the last 10 messages that we actually sent it. So if I go and ask it, hey, what did I tell you before, it will actually be able to tell me. But if I ask it after I've sent 10 messages, hey, what did I tell you in the first message, it will actually forget the first message, since the context window it actually has is only for 10 messages. That's what it basically means. Over here the table name is basically where, well, this chat history is actually stored, which if you remember is actually the first table that is created once you set up your Supabase credentials with N8N. And if you haven't done that, again, make sure you go and watch that video and come back over to this video so you can actually create this automation, because in this video I show you how you can connect Postgres as well. So it is actually a requirement in order for you to be able to complete this automation. And then it's time we actually give our AI agent access to our Supabase vector store. So to do that, you simply have to come over here, click on the plus tool, simply search for Supabase vector store and simply select it. And now over here what we have to do is to obviously select our credentials. I will select mine, and over here what we need to make sure it is actually on retrieve documents as a tool for an AI agent, because that's exactly what we want to do. We want to retrieve the documents for the AI agent to be able to use them. So I will select this one, and over here we need to give it a description, basically telling it when the AI agent should be using this node and how it should be using it. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I will say, make sure you use this node every time I ask you a question, you look up in this node for data, and then you give me an answer. So that's basically my description. And over here I will also come and change its name to data for answer, since the AI agent actually uses this description and the actual name of the node to find out when it should use this specific node. That's why I gave it this name. And over here we need to come in the table name, simply click on the list, and we need to select the table we have inserted all of our data to, which in our case is the example table 1 over here. Then we have the limit, which is basically how many of the top results we're going to fetch from the vector store. You can obviously increase it. I will input it to 10. I think 10 is a pretty good number. Then over here you have these two options, which are not really that important. You can leave them as they are. You can simply come over here and click off of it. And now we actually need to add in an embedding in a Supabase vector store so it can actually work. So simply come over here and click on the plus icon, and again search for OpenAI. And remember guys what I told you before, you need to use the exact same model over here as the model that you used in all of these vector databases over here. So you can simply come over here and open it up and see, oh, I used the 3 small model, so that is the model I actually need to use in my AI agent over here. Because if you actually use a different model, it will actually give you an error. So make sure you have the exact same model as before. And now we have basically configured everything. Let's actually test our agent to see if it actually works. So if you remember over here guys, at the start of the video, I sent this message over to Slack which says that a product costs $200. So let's actually ask the AI agent to see if it actually knows that. So I will simply come over here and say, how much does our product cost? And I will simply send this message. And let's see the AI agent in action. It actually goes inside the vector database, looks up for information, and boom guys, as you can see over here, it told us that the product costs $200. Which is the exact message we had sent over to Slack like 1 hour ago, and it was able to successfully retrieve it and give it to us. Now I open up this random Google Sheet. Let's say I want to find the email of my customer, which is called George. So all I have to do is come over here and say, what is George's email? And simply click on enter. And again, the AI agent will run, take a look inside the vector database, and it will give us this output, which is George's email is george@gmail.com. Which, if we come back over to the Google Sheet, we can see that this is the exact email we have inside here. But now let's test the data that I have inside Notion as well. So as you can see over here, I have written someone needs to create the marketing campaign till the 8th of June. So if I come back over here and I say what is the deadline that I have to create the marketing campaign, and simply click on enter, boom, it gives me an output. And if I open this up guys, we can see the deadline to create the marketing campaign is until the 8th of June, which is exactly what I had inputted inside Notion. And just to finalize it, if I come over in this Google Sheet, I can see that over here I have 2 MacBook purchases, one MacBook Pro 14 inches and one MacBook Pro 16 inches. I will come over here and say how many MacBooks did I buy, and simply click on enter. And if it is able to actually tell me that I bought 2 MacBooks, it will actually be pretty impressive. And as you can see over here, you bought 2 MacBook Pros, one with a 14-inch screen and another with a 16-inch screen. So it also specified the screen, which is simply amazing. And you can see that this AI agent can actually really be used to train any new team member in your company, which indeed makes it super valuable. And now the only thing we actually have to do guys is to simply come over here, delete this one, connect it to the webhook so it actually receives data from the webhook, and simply come over here, open this up, and change the chat input that we had with the trigger node. Simply delete this one and actually give it the message that we send over to the webhook, which is over here in the body section, which is this one over here. So simply take it, drag and drop this over here, and now we're good to go with this one. And the last thing we need to do is to simply come over here and actually search for a respond to webhook node, since we actually want to be able to send the response back over in a Lovable interface that we just built. So what we have to do is to simply come over here, change this from first incoming item to where it says text. Let's execute the previous workflow. So we actually have the data over here, and over here we can see the output. So we'll simply take the output schema over here and drag and drop this over here. So this is the response that is sent back into Lovable. But before we're actually able to send the response back into Lovable, what we have to do is to simply close this, come over here in the webhook node, and we actually have to come over here to where it says respond and change this from immediately to using respond to webhook node. Since if we have not actually selected this, it will not actually be able to send data back into Lovable. Don't ask me why we have to configure this inside the webhook and not inside the respond to webhook node. I have no idea. You should probably ask AI that. But that's how it is. So make sure you actually have this selected so it can actually work. So now let me actually unpin this data. Now if I come over here and simply click on execute step, you can see that the workflow actually runs correctly and we do have an output over here. But if I come back over to Lovable, I cannot actually see the response that N8N just sent back, and that is because we have to tell Lovable that it should be expecting a response back from N8N, so it can actually display it inside this interface. So that is exactly what we're going to do right now. I'll simply come over here and say, hey, make sure you expect a response to come back from N8N and make sure you display it inside the interface as a response from the AI Onboarding Assistant, and simply click on enter. And now Lovable will actually make sure it is actually listening and waiting for data to come back over from N8N, so it can actually display the response inside this interface. And boom, Lovable just finished making the changes. So let's actually test it. So if I come over here and simply ask the same question again, simply click on enter, you can see that it is thinking right now, and boom, it gives us a response and tells us the service costs $200, which is the exact data we have inside Supabase that we got from our Slack messages. So guys, I think you can see how useful a system like this is and how it can actually work as an AI onboarding assistant by having access to all of our company's information. Now, if you actually don't want to have to build this whole thing, which is a pretty big automation as you guys can see over here, what you can actually do is click the link underneath this video and join my brand new school community. And the way it's, I not only have all the assets from all the videos that I have done, so you can just simply come over here, download the JSON file, upload it to N8N, and have the automation populated immediately without you having to do anything. But I also have a full AI SaaS roadmap course in which I go over in detail how you can build your own AI SaaS and how you can actually market it to get customers. I also have a full N8N course in which I go more in depth about explaining N8N, the fundamental concepts and more advanced concepts like HTTP requests and AI agents. I even show you how you can automatically generate images and videos inside N8N and how you can create multi-agent systems. And I will also start a brand new series which I'm very excited about, which is going to be going from $0 on Upwork to over $10,000 with a completely brand new account, in which I will go over the exact strategy and basically document my whole process on how we'll go from $0 to over $10,000 on Upwork. So definitely make sure you join. You do not want to miss the series, and also have access to these courses and the assets over here. And also you will have access to this awesome community of over 120 people that are actually interested in building AI automations and creating an AI SaaS just like you are. So definitely click the link in the description and check out the community. Now also I could significantly improve this automation by adding in different triggers, so we're able to add in more information in our database, and obviously adding in more apps that a company uses, so we can actually have more data inside our database. So if you want to see an even bigger build like this with even more information inside our Supabase vector store, make sure you leave a comment requesting that, and if enough of you actually want to see this, I will definitely make a video like that. But in any case guys, YouTube thinks you're going to enjoy this video, in which I actually built a $1 million SaaS by using just Lovable and N8N. So make sure you go and check it out, and I will see you over there.